Have you ever noticed this strange detail in human behavior? The silent taboo of taller women. Why do so many avoid shorter men in public, but behind closed doors, everything changes? Is pride louder than love? Or is it just society's pressure, forcing appearances where height matters more than connection? Picture this. A couple. He's confident, but shorter. She's tall, elegant. In private, laughter, affection, passion. But outside, under the public eye, distance, silence, shame. Is this the price of a world that still measures a man by his height? Or the whole topic of tall women being taboo is fascinating. It's one of those things that many people don't even know is real. But it is. Height is a fascinating topic in human relationships, especially when we talk about attraction and romantic relationships. There is a curious social phenomenon that deserves our attention. The apparent contradiction in the behavior of some tall women regarding shorter men. Why, in certain contexts, do these women seem publicly avoid relationships with men of shorter stature? But behind closed doors, everything changes. This text proposes to explore this complex question, diving into the layers of social pressure, cultural expectations, individual psychology, and the patterns that govern our romantic choices. This is not about judging or criticizing anyone, but rather about understanding the invisible mechanisms that influence our decisions and behaviors. The social construction of height. From a very early age, we are exposed to cultural narratives about how couples should be. In fairy tales, the prince is always tall, strong, and protective. In soap operas and movies, we rarely see the man being significantly shorter than his partner. This constant repetition creates a mental pattern that accompanies us throughout life. Society has built, over centuries, an association between male height and qualities like leadership, protection, strength, and masculinity. On the other hand, the tall woman often faces comments about being intimidating or difficult to handle. These narratives are not biological or natural truths, but rather social constructions that perpetuate themselves through repetition. When a tall woman considers a relationship with a shorter man, she is not simply making an individual decision based on personal attraction. She is, conscious or not, evaluating how this relationship will be perceived by others, what kind of comments she will receive, and how this will affect her own social image. The pressure of the public gaze. Public space is a stage where we all present ourselves. We walk through the streets, frequent restaurants, go to social events, always aware, on some level, that we are being observed. This awareness of others' gaze profoundly influences our behavior. For a tall woman, accompanied by a shorter man, this experience can be particularly challenging. The curious looks, the whispered comments, the veiled jokes, all of this creates an atmosphere of judgment that can be extremely uncomfortable. It is not uncommon for couples in this configuration to hear comments like, "She must wear high heels just to make him more embarrassed," or "Poor guy, he must have some other compensating quality." These comments reveal much about our society. They expose the deeply rooted expectation that the man should be physically larger than the woman, as if this was a fundamental requirement for the validation of the relationship. When this expectation is not met, people feel the need to comment, question, or even make jokes. Social pressure doesn't just come from strangers. Often, it comes from well-meaning family and friends. Don't you think it's weird to wear high heels around him? Or don't you feel uncomfortable when you go out together? Are questions that, although they may seem innocent, reinforce the stigma and create doubts where Perhaps none existed.
The refuge of privacy. In contrast to public space, the private environment offers something precious: freedom from others' judgment. When doors close and the couple is alone, external pressures dissipate. There are no curious looks, malicious comments, or social expectations to be met. It is in this space that genuine connection can flourish without interference. Chemistry, humor, intelligence, kindness, all these qualities that truly matter in a relationship can be appreciated without the filter of social approval. Height ceases to be a relevant factor when two individuals are building emotional and physical intimacy. Many women report that in privacy, they don't even think about the height difference. What matters is the quality of conversation, the intensity of emotional connection, the compatibility of values and goals. Physical attraction, when genuine, transcends conventional measurements and proportions. This dichotomy between public and private reveals an important truth. Many of our romantic restrictions are not based on real preferences, but rather on fear of social judgment. Removing this fear, possibilities expand considerably. The role of social media. In the digital age, the line between public and private has become even more nebulous. Social media has created a new type of public space where we are all simultaneously observers and observed. For relationships that defy conventional standards, this adds an extra layer of complexity. A tall woman dating a shorter man may hesitate before posting a photo of the couple on social media. She knows that image will be seen by hundreds or thousands of people, each with their own opinions and judgments. Comments can range from seemingly harmless jokes to direct and offensive criticism. This digital pressure intensifies the behavior of avoiding public exposure of the relationship. It is not uncommon for couples in this situation to maintain individual profiles on social media, rarely posting photos together or publicly mentioning the relationship. This doesn't necessarily mean they are ashamed of each other, but rather that they are protecting their relationship from public scrutiny. The issue becomes even more complicated when we consider that in specific professional or family environments, this exposure can have real consequences. A woman in a leadership position, for example, may fear that a relationship with a shorter man will be used to undermine her authority or create narratives about her personal life that affect her professional image. Psychology of attraction and preferences. It is important to distinguish between social pressure and genuine personal preference. Some women really do prefer taller men for reasons that go beyond social approval. Attraction is multifactorial and can include visual, evolutionary, and psychological elements that are valid and legitimate. Studies suggest that certain preferences for height may have evolutionary roots. The association between male height and capacity for protection and provision may have been advantageous in ancestral contexts. However, it is crucial to recognize that we live in a radically different world, where these characteristics no longer determine a partner's success. The problem arises when individual preferences are transformed into rigid rules by social pressure. A woman may feel attraction to a shorter man, but suppress that feeling because it's not what is expected of her, or because she fears others' judgment. This suppression is not healthy and can lead to the loss of genuine and meaningful connections.
Fragile masculinity and gender expectations. We cannot discuss this topic without addressing the role that fragile masculinity plays in this dynamic. Many men have been conditioned to believe that their masculinity is directly linked to their height. A shorter man may carry deep insecurities about his adequacy as a romantic partner. These insecurities can manifest in various ways: discomfort beside a taller woman, reluctance to appear in photos together, or even compensatory behaviors such as aggressiveness or excessive need for control. When a tall woman perceives these insecurities, she may hesitate to continue the relationship, not because of height itself, but because of the emotional problems that accompany insecurity. On the other hand, men who have developed genuine confidence in themselves, regardless of height, tend to be much more secure and attractive partners. They don't feel threatened by their partner's height, and may even appreciate and celebrate this characteristic. These men often report more satisfying relationships because they are not constantly trying to prove their masculinity. Gender expectations also affect women. Many have been taught that they should be delicate, feminine, and smaller than their partners. A tall woman may have struggled all her life with feelings of being too big or not feminine enough. Dating a shorter man can intensify these insecurities, especially in public, where she feels even more visible. Real experiences. Voices of tall women. To truly understand this phenomenon, it is essential to hear the experiences of women who have lived through this situation. Many report a complex journey of self-discovery and acceptance. Anna, a woman of 5 feet 11, shares, "When I started dating my husband, who is 5 feet 6, I was ashamed to go out with him. I didn't wear heels, tried to bend a little when walking. But at home, it was completely different. There I could be myself, and our connection was incredible. Over time, I realized I was wasting energy worrying about what others thought. Today, I wear heels when I want to and walk with my head held high. If someone has a problem with that, the problem is theirs, not ours." Mariana, 5 feet 10, says, "I had relationships with taller men where there was no real connection, but I felt adequate in society's eyes. When I met someone shorter with whom I had incredible chemistry, I faced an enormous internal dilemma. My family made comments, friends made jokes. Eventually, I chose my happiness over others' approval, but I admit I still feel the weight of the public gaze sometimes." These stories reveal a pattern, the internal struggle between authenticity and social conformity. Many women go through a maturation process where they learn to prioritize the quality of connection over the external appearance of the relationship. The emotional cost of conformity. Living according to external expectations has a high price. When a woman avoids relationships that could be satisfying simply due to height issues, she is potentially giving up genuine happiness in exchange for temporary social approval. Conformity can lead to unsatisfying relationships where height is the main compatibility criterion. A woman may choose a tall partner who doesn't treat her well, who doesn't share her values, or who doesn't offer the emotional connection she desires, simply because it looks right in others' eyes. The emotional cost extends beyond romantic choices. The constant need to conform to external standards can erode self-esteem and sense of identity. Tall women who constantly receive messages that they should find someone taller may develop complexes about their own height, seeing it as a problem to be solved instead of simply a neutral characteristic. Furthermore, this conformity perpetuates the same harmful patterns for future generations. When young people observe adults reinforcing these height expectations, they internalize these rules as immutable and necessary. The cycle continues.
Deconstructing the taboo, steps towards change. Significant social changes rarely happen overnight, but each individual can contribute to deconstructing this specific taboo. The first step is awareness, recognizing that these expectations exist and that they influence our choices in ways that are not always beneficial. Education plays a crucial role. Teaching children from early on that healthy relationships are based on respect, compatibility, and affection, not on physical measurements, can create a generation less bound to these arbitrary standards. Exposing children to diverse representations of couples can normalize different physical configurations. Tall women who publicly challenge these norms become important role models,
When public figures, influencers, or even people in our social circles live happy relationships that defy the standard, they expand what is seen as possible and acceptable. Representation matters enormously. Men also have a fundamental role. Shorter men who work on their insecurities and develop genuine confidence demonstrate that masculinity is not measured in centimeters. Taller men who support relationships of friends that don't follow the traditional pattern help normalize these configurations. The role of media and pop culture. Media exerts powerful influence over our perceptions. Movies, series, advertisements, and music constantly reinforce certain standards. How many times do we see in mainstream productions a couple where the woman is significantly taller than the man, portrayed positively and without this being the focus of jokes? When these representations exist, usually the height difference is used as a comic device or as an obstacle to be overcome, reinforcing the idea that there is something unnormal or problematic about this configuration. We rarely see couples like this simply existing without their height being a point of discussion. The good news is that this is slowly changing. Some content producers have consciously chosen actors and stories that challenge these patterns. Each positive representation contributes to normalizing diversity in relationships. Beyond entertainment, advertising is also beginning to reflect greater diversity. Campaigns that show couples of different physical configurations, including tall women with shorter men, help expand our perception of what is normal and desirable. Intersectionality, race, class, and culture. It is important to recognize that the experience of a tall woman with a short man is not uniform. Factors such as race, social class, and specific culture significantly influence how this dynamic is lived and perceived. In some cultures, expectations about height in relationships are even more rigid than in others. In certain communities, a man's value as a partner is deeply linked to his physical stature, making it even more challenging for tall women to find acceptance when they choose shorter partners. Tall black women, for example, may face additional layers of complexity, simultaneously dealing with racialized stereotypes about femininity with expectations about height. The same applies to women of other ethnicities who already deal with specific and often exclusionary beauty standards. Social class also matters. In environments where appearance and social status are intimately linked, the pressure to have a partner who looks appropriate can be even greater. Women in positions of high social visibility may feel additional pressure to conform to traditional expectations. Biology versus social construction. A frequent debate in this discussion is how much of our preferences are biological versus socially constructed. It's a complex question without simple answers. There are certainly evolutionary elements in our partner preferences, including physical aspects. However, the rigidity with which we apply these preferences and the social anxiety that accompanies deviations from them clearly have strong cultural components. In societies or historical periods where different couple configurations were more normalized, people did not experience the same level of discomfort. Furthermore, we know that preferences can be influenced and even modified by exposure and experience. Someone who never considered dating a shorter or taller person may discover a powerful connection that challenges their previous preferences. This suggests that many of our preferences are more flexible than we imagine. The question should not be whether or not we have biological preferences, but rather whether we allow these preferences to be transformed into rigid rules that limit our possibilities for connection and happiness. A soft preference that can be overcome by other qualities is very different from an inflexible rule based on social anxiety. The future. Where are we going? As society evolves and increasingly questions rigid gender norms, there is hope that taboos like this will gradually lose strength.
Younger generations seem, in general, less bound to traditional expectations about how couples should be or look